Well, it's been 5 years since I started this little venture, and even though I've reached a stage of life now where I find there are three things I generally try to avoid doing: remembering anything, making decisions, or analysing my own behaviour and choices, I've decided to mark this occasion with a little film made largely of outtakes or bits and pieces I didn't use in other videos, and some reflections, some are comfortable, some not so, on the last 5 years of not only this channel, but the little community on YouTube I inhabit as a whole. God damn, I love my work. The question I get asked most often, or the aspect of my channel that's most remarked upon, is that given there's 200 plus videos over 5 years, why hasn't it been more successful? And what a flop it's been. I have never amassed any great number of subscribers. In fact, I've only just got back all the ones I lost with TRB 105. 32% of my views come from people who aren't subscribers, and I dare say the bulk of them come to the channel from the playlists which accompany each video. So there's a tip to channels who might want to attract some new viewers. But I can't be sure of how many of those turn into subscriptions. Not many, I would hazard a guess. I have on average half the number of subs of a typical channel of those I would consider peers. Also, I seem to have inadvertently split what audience I do have. There's one that primarily watches the TRB series of videos and guys who prefer the top 10 related ones. I think another reason my channel doesn't grow quickly is because it doesn't have a specific focus. People tend to congregate around channels that affirm their tastes. I'm more for someone who likes surprises. And you're not going to just walk by and sub, because the fact that you get a surprise is part of, well, the surprise.
Waxahachie. Waxahachie.
People may also ask in 5 years, what have you enjoyed most about being on YouTube? Well, it's always a pleasure to meet smart people who disagree with me or see things differently. The YouTube music community is a pleasant harbour away from the opposite category of people, dumbasses who talk shit all the time, a species all too abundantly found in nature, which is not to say there are a few such specimens in our little nest of idyll, but they're much more easily avoided. I like being in a little world where people whose thoughts can be expressed in work I admire, with channels that go to places I neither agree nor disagree with because I haven't even thought about it. Channels like the late lamented Mama's Records, Fence Post Vinyl, Charcuterie Sounds, Medium Quality,
Come back, Adam, we miss you.
Crushed Custard, Polyphonic, or Andy from Fence Post's other channel, Poetic Wax, and dozens of others are all places to hear new sounds and new perspectives on old ones. Sometimes I disagree with them, but they're all a good deal smarter than me, and that's what I dig. And then there are the real gentlefolk of the community like Gary at Physical Format, or Anthony at Gambler 812, Barry from Classic Album Review, Dan at Mini Album Review, The Guitar Troupe, or Martin at Crushed Custard, who have the sense of bonhomie that I've never been able to project. I've never been comfortable on cameras like these movie stars. I do love getting comments on videos. There's hardly a time going through them when I don't read something so incredibly funny or profoundly clever, and frequently both, that I don't end up in some ecstatic paroxysm. I need to be better in so much as I'm so idle in responding to them, and I wish I wasn't so lazy. I also try and be as assiduous as I can in getting comments to good videos I watch. Some of the essays I left on Barry's channel should have been scripts for my own videos. By nature, I'm a problem solver. That's what I enjoy, and every time I make a video, I always try and find a problem to solve. It may be the best way to represent an idea filmically, or it may be how best to tie together a story or a stream of idea threads. Sometimes it's quite inelegant. The biggest issue I can't work out is how to keep the videos to a watchable runtime. They have been getting a little long lately, and I apologise for that. But sometimes, like TRB 102 or TRB 109, I think it comes together just right, and that's very satisfying. Some videos are easy and fun. Most of the Passes of Foreign Country ones are just that, and I really enjoyed the ones like Laura Nero and the Brew Building one because I had to learn new things to do, and I really believed in the story I was telling. Some videos, though, seem intractable. This one, for example, is in its third incarnation. Or TRB 109 meant I had to walk about 10 miles up and down the hills around my hometown on a 97-degree day filming. No mean feat for a fat old man with one leg.
Gotta raise hell before you hell down.
The corollary of the question, of course, is what do I not like about YouTube? I don't like having to take shortcuts, and I did that especially in the early days. I often think about stopping work on new videos altogether and going back to remake old videos where the stories are good, but I just didn't know how to tell them. I've never been good at sound design too, so that's something I'd very much like to revisit. I don't like that good ideas seem to be thinner on the ground these days, and I'm increasingly having to rely on subjective thoughts and reflections rather than trying to make a thesis and defend it. That's what the Pastors of Foreign Country is for, but really, the videos like TRB 86 and 90, it sort of opened up the floodgate for the more subjective and personal kind of video to come in here. I think a lot of us are trying in our own way to defend our own country, to live in that past through music. And I'm not by nature a person who does that. I always think we should look forward with music, but I find myself too sentimental, I guess, as I get older to ruthlessly prosecute this the way I used to. I'm mired, like most of us in the past. And that leads me to the thing I like second least about having to curate the channel these last 5 years. And that is that you're always locked into listening to one kind of music or one artist when you are hyper-focused on understanding and writing. And then the minute it's finished, you have to move on to the next steady diet. It's so hard to find time and soft ears to listen to new music or new artists. I tend to think that if we aren't acting as curators to our own musical experiences, but just going around in circles, how can we help our audience curate their experience? But the thing I dislike most about YouTube is YouTube itself. I have to tell you, MySpace was a much better platform for low-rent creators to get media out than YouTube. The most depressing thing about it is the thing that makes me want to throw up my head every day and say, fuck it, there's no point in doing any work on this, is when you look at the stats and you see videos going backward in their view counts. TRB 107, which did slightly better than average for me, at its peak had 471 views. 10 days later it has 388. TRB 80 had just under 300. Now it has 180. I know it doesn't mean anything, but it just puts a knot in my gut when I see it. I don't know why. It just does. You do all that work and you just feed it into a broken machine.
I'd be ever so keen enough.
To finish, and this is probably too self-indulgent, but there's another telling irony that presents itself after 5 years. When I started, I did so because I wanted to see if I could apply the critical model of a chap, always cranky, very non-PC chap called Harold Bloom, whose two main theories, one called the anxiety of influence and the other called the Western canon, said that the rules for literature were pretty basic and had been set down a long time ago by guys like Shakespeare, Dante, Tolstoy, etc., 19 or 20 different writers in all, and every writer needed to be assessed against a common critical bar, to see if I could apply that as well as the Hegelian model of history to popular music. I sort of got this idea back in the early 2000s. My first, now long-gone YouTube video were actually in 2006 or so, when I hosted them on my MySpace and WordPress blogs. Or I had a series where I'd realised my iPod had at least one song from every year of the last 100 years, and I'd write an essay on one song from each of those years and make a little movie to go with it. Now, 5 years ago, I thought this was all rather fresh and very clever at the time. Problem is, 5 years in, I see now there are two types of content creators in my little view of the community. The vast majority who actually agree with Bloom, perhaps without knowing it, and those who reject him. And I'm one of the ones, as it turns out, who actually reject him. I've lived long enough to become the villain in my own story. You see, Bloom said everything devolves back to old dead white guys, and well, look at the vast majority of our little world. Our canon is about the music of dead white guys who refuse to die, music which devolved from dead white guys, or music that dead white guys learned from even deader black guys. Black music, female artists.
He said, fellas, it's a fucking sausage factory around here most days, isn't it?
Contemporary acts, non-English singing acts, acts that don't come from countries with a North Atlantic coastline, seem to be the province of specialist channels rather than the general community, and God love them for hosting that material. I see them as wonderful outliers to the canon and the destination for our musical horizons, not the fixed foundations of them. So I'm in that camp. It's just I mix the bag up a bit more, I guess.
2, 3, 4.
In the end, though, I'm just a cranky lone Australian, ploughing my own crooked little furrow in a big, wide, fascinating milia. And to that end, on 5 years, I'd like to thank so much those people who've supported the channel through good and bad, and salute all those wonderful creators, those wonderful, passionate, good-humoured and tenacious creators who give so much, so consistently. Those for whom the good Lord is always willing, and the creeks roll easy onward. Godspeed you all, whither thou goest.
Hey Johnny, she's a smashing bird, that Yoko is.
F*** off, Ringo.